you have your housing joints all marked out, ready to saw. And you're going to need a tenon saw and a bench hook for this part. There are two parts to the making of this joint. We're going to saw the shoulders of the housing joint with our tenon saw, and we're going to chisel the rest of it. So let's do part one. So set yourself up with your bench hook and one of your pieces. Now it makes sense to put the work in the bench with the face edge towards you, so then you can see what you're doing. We're going to saw on the waist side of the line, and this is really important. You want to saw the left hand line first, because if you were to try and saw the right hand line, then you'd have that problem of peering over the saw and changing your body position. So line your saw up with the edge of the block there on the bench hook, and start sawing beside the line. Now this is a very shallow cut, so remember to stop when you get to the line. Now for the next cut, we need to cut into the waist side of the line. So I need to turn the piece of wood around so that my saw will be in the right position. Now your face side is on your face edge is on the other side. You need to be careful that you don't go over the line. Just keep that at a shallow angle when you cut, and you'll be fine. Check that you've come down to your gauge line on both sides. Don't saw the other one yet. We're going to complete this joint with chiseling, which is next, which is part two. Part two, chiseling the housing joint. You can find chisels in just about every area of woodworking, including wood carving and wood turning, carpentry, furniture making. And as you'd imagine, there's a lot of different sizes and shapes of chisels available to do specific jobs. Some are designed to take big chunks out of wood or dig deep holes, and others are used to make paper thin shavings to get that perfect fit of that joint. This is the type of chisel that you will need to use. It's called a bevel edge chisel. It has sloping sides, bevel edges. It has a bevel at the front, and there's also another very fine bevel right at the tip. This is the part that is sharp, and this is the part that does the cutting. Now the tools you'll need for chiseling are your pencil box, a tri-square, a G-clamp, and if you're using a G-clamp, a bit of scrap to protect your wood, or two sliding clamps, a bevel edge chisel that's 19 millimeters across or 18, depending on what you could get hold of, a rule and a mallet, and just a piece of non-skid mat, and a bit of old yoga mat will do if you have any of that. Setting up for the housing joint. You have your non-skid matting in place right up to the edge of the surface of the workbench, and take your piece and make sure that you position it so that the non-face edge is facing you. If feel that's flush with your fingers. Now I'm going to use a G-clamp, and I need a piece of waste to protect my wood from the clamp. I just need one of these because they're very strong. Good job. Now if you were using the sliding clamps, you would need two, but you wouldn't need any waste because they have yellow rubber pads that protect your wood. The last thing to do is give your wood a good tug and make sure it doesn't move. And now you're ready to chisel. Now we're up to part 2, getting ready to chisel this joint. There's 2 parts to it. The first one we're going to chop out between the saw cuts, and the second part we're going to pare with the chisel. But firstly, let's position our body in relationship to the work. Your body's at slight right angles to the wood. Grasp your chisel by wrapping your hand around the handle and hold your mallet towards the base. And now you're ready to chisel. This is the chopping technique. Place your chisel with the bevel edge facing down between the 2 saw cuts. And with your mallet, give the end a short, sharp tap. You've got the chisel tilted slightly at an angle. The chisel will penetrate about 2 mil into the wood, and if you go along at 3 mil, 4 mil intervals, that's just fine. You'll notice that I'm working from the centre of the wood out. Continue all the way along to the end. Now if you have your chisel facing the wrong way, then you'll get a different cut, even a different sound. So you can tell that something's not quite right. So make sure that bevel side is facing down. Go all the way to the end and just be gentle at the front here. Now turn your chisel over so that the flat side is facing down, and put your chisel almost flat. Just take those little bits off. And then go down again. Chisel at a slight angle, bevel side down. Short, sharp shocks. 3 mils apart. All the way along. Now remember, you're not going too deep, so be gentle and light. Gentle at the front here. I haven't turned my chisel over yet, but I will now. And back to almost flat. If I have my chisel at too high of an angle, it will dig into the wood. Now I'm a couple of mils away from my line. I think now I'll set my mallet aside, turn the chisel over so the flat is down, and I'm now going to pare by hand. There's a couple of ways to do this, but always your hands are behind the chisel blade, the cutting edge at least. I'm going to use my thumb to give some pressure, and I'm going to use my other hand to steer the chisel and push and pull it backwards and forwards. Again, keeping it quite flat. Now when I come to the front, there's not much to go here. I can what we call skew the chisel, or just turn it slightly sideways and bring it round. And just peel off very thin layers. That's the key. Thin layers. Just pushing and pulling. This is a lovely thing to do. It can be very meditative. Very charming thing to do. Okay, coming from the other side. Again, pressure and control with the hand. The hand's right up to the wood, pushing firmly against the wood. This way. Now you'll see that I'm starting to get what I call raggy bits. And that's where I just haven't gone down with my saw far enough. So I'm going to use my chisel flat against the shoulder to get rid of those, and just rock it backwards and forwards. Or you can use your mallet if you like. Your aim is to get it as flat as possible. Now I might need to work on that a little bit more shortly, but I'll just see if my wood fits. You can use the other end of the side that you have and see if it'll slide in there. Yeah, it will. Now you're ready to turn your work around and work from the other side. Now the face side, the face edge rather, is facing you. Again, flush with the edge. Clamp it securely. And do the same again. As you're cleaning up the joint, make sure you work just into the center. You don't want your blade to pass out over the edge of the wood as it's vulnerable. So stay working into the center. Now we need to fine-tune the housing joint. We need to make sure that these are level. You've gone down to your gauge line on both sides, but it's hard to tell whether there's any bumps in the middle. So a little trick that you can do is to grab your tri-square and rub your lead pencil along the edge of it. Or it can be your chisel, whatever's straight to hand, and rest it on the housing joint flat and rub it backwards and forwards. Don't worry if you get a bit of a dip in the middle. To ensure it's flat, the blade should rest on this gauge line and this gauge line at the same time. Just before you finish, check it with its pair and make sure that your lines are lined up. If they're not, you can change them, but otherwise you're ready to now saw and chisel the other joint.